Verzeo. Learn here, lead anywhere. Subscribe to our Verzeo channel and tap the bell icon to receive all notifications. Download the Verzeo app and get free content access.
Hello everyone, good evening. This is Shrikant Arwa, and I'm here to give a webinar on blockchain, bitcoins, and beyond. Okay, I hope you all are doing fine and excited to know more about this. And I'm here for the same to share my knowledge on this and get to know you. So I think we can get started with the session.
Yes, sir, we can start.
Yes. A brief introduction about me. I'm Shrikant Arwa. I've been a full stack developer for over 7 years in this industry, and I've been working as a blockchain trainer with Vozio for the past 1 year, and that gives me credentials to give this presentation. And also, I have one more credential uh, that is that I have invested in these cryptocurrencies and I've lost some money in this. So I have made some mistakes and I've learned from it, and I think that is also valuable credentials to be a blockchain trainer. Okay, this is a brief introduction about me, and let's move on to the topic that we are here for. That is blockchain. So assume to before we start anything concrete, assume all of us that how many of us are in this meeting? 18. Okay, assume we all are a blockchain, not individually a blockchain. We have built a blockchain network among us. 18. This blockchain has 18, 19 nodes in it. Okay. This has 19 nodes. So all of us are a blockchain. So we we all are individual nodes. We all have equal responsibilities. Some nodes might have some extra responsibilities, but we all have equal authority in this. We have equal say in this node. Okay, this is a peer-to-peer network, not a client-server network. This is a peer-to-peer network. Clear? All of us are in a blockchain right now. So let's see what blockchain is. Blockchain is a decentralized database that records the provenance of a digital asset. So we all know what database is, right? So now this is a database that is decentralized. It is not just with me as I'm part of this part of the blockchain. It is with all of us. We all 18, 20 people who are in this meeting all have this database. That is why it is a decentralized database that records provenance of a digital asset. It could be anything. Digital asset could be a transaction, could be money, could be a tokenized physical asset, could be gold as a digital asset. Okay, could be a commodity as a physical as a digital asset. It could be anything. Proves that this is a valid state of the asset. That I have $100 worth of Bitcoin. That is the proven. It proves that I have this asset. Okay, let's see how it actually works. How does a blockchain work? Okay, here uh, assume there's a transaction that is happening between two of you. Let's say Aman and Ayush are doing a transaction in this network. So Aman sends $100 to Ayush. Okay, that is still a transaction yet. It is not a verified transaction. So Aman sends this transaction that we all receive this as we are part of the blockchain. We all receive this transaction, out of which some of us have taken the responsibility of verifying this transaction. Okay, so those people who have taken the responsibility of verifying this transaction, they verify everything is right. Does Aman really have $100 in his account before transferring? Okay, they verify, and there are certain other things that needs to be verified, that whether this transaction has been transmitted over the network or not, and a few more conditions are there. All those things are verified, and then at the end of the process, this process is called mining, where in mining process what happens is we add new transactions to the blockchain. So the blockchain right now is in till 10th block. Okay, there are 10 blocks in this blockchain. Now with this new transaction that is happening between Aman and Ayush is added to the 11th block. Okay, this was unverified. Now they have verified everything is working fine, everything is correct, and the money can be transferred into Ayush account, right? So this is verified and added into the blockchain. So that is what you can see. This newly created block is added into the blockchain, and only then this transaction is uh, only when all of us in the blockchain network accepts that okay, this is a valid block, the new block that has been created by few people who are in this blockchain, okay, is valid. Only then we'll be able to uh, only then this particular transaction is considered as a confirmed transaction. So now you see that there is a lot of things that are going on this to just to verify every single transaction. This is how typically any blockchain works. Everything that you do in blockchain is a transaction. Whether you transfer money, whether you transfer asset, whether you transfer real estate, whatever you do is considered as a transaction. Clear? If you have any doubts, feel free to ask any questions in the chat box. I'll be very happy to answer those questions. If you're not clear, please wait for a while. Okay. So let's see what does individual block contain. Now that we know how the blockchain works, how let's see each and individual block, what are its constituents, right? So we want to understand how it is built. So first thing is we are building block number 11. This is block number 11. It has three main things, but these are not the only things. There are other things as well, but these three are important ones. So the first thing is hash of current block, hash of the current block, that is block number 11. Okay, it also has the hash of previous block, that is block number 10, and list of transactions that are verified, these freshly verified transactions. The transaction between Aman and Ayush is in this one. Okay, and not just one transaction, there could be thousands of transactions in every single block depending on the block size. Every blockchain will have different block size. Bitcoin has around 1.5 MB of block size. So in 1.5 MB, how many transactions can be added? Maybe few thousands of transactions can be added. Then those transactions can be added here. Okay, but some other blockchains like Bitcoin Cash has around 5 MB. Some others have much bigger size. Okay, it depends from blockchain to blockchain, but still the process, the constituents still remain the same. Now you may ask me like, what is hash? Okay, uh, hash is a unique signature of a block. Every block has its own unique signature, unique, just like we have our DNAs. Each block has its own DNA or unique signature, we can say, or in technical terms, hash. How these hashes are generated? These are generated through hashing algorithms. There are multiple algorithms that are used to generate these hashes. So Bitcoin uses SHA-256 is one of the hash that is used by Bitcoin to generate the hash of each block. Ethereum uses RIPMD algorithm. These are algorithms. You don't have to really worry about this. Okay, you don't have to create it anyway. These are already very well tested, thoroughly documented hashes. So we have to just make use of them to create this. So these are the unique hashes of each and every single block. So one more unique feature is, even if you change a very single minute dot, if you change a full stop to a comma, the hash will change, the signature will be different. It's okay. So there is a transaction Aman and Ayush of $100. If I change from 100 to just make it from 100 to 1000, the whole hash looks totally different. It looks nothing like what it was before. Okay, because the DNA has changed, because the constituents, all of this together will form the hash. So now we will look at how block was formed. Now let's see how block is converted into a blockchain. Now we are talking about blockchains, how this blockchain is formed, that we want to understand. Okay, so to understand this, to understand how block becomes a blockchain, we have to look at this example. Okay, here These are all the transactions that are there. There is a root hash, previous hash, that is the hash of block number 9 is stored in this block number 10. And then hash of the current block is also there. Nonce is a random number and also timestamp of when this block was created. To create the root hash, all the transactions are required, also previous transaction and nonce. Okay, these are all combined together, and using the hashing algorithm, we generate the hash, uh, generate the root hash. Okay, so if you change any single full stop, dot, comma, a capital I to a small I, the whole hash is different. It looks totally different. Now that it is stored here, this root hash becomes the previous hash in the next block, in block number 11. Right? This becomes previous hash here, and root hash of block number 11 is also generated in the same way. So now root hash of block number 11 is stored in block number 12. To create hash of each block, previous hash is important as well. So now we can see the link is formed. The reference to the previous block is stored in the next block. Reference of the current block is stored in the succeeding block, right? Like this, every block is connected to its predecessors and the next one. So this is how a chain is formed. There is a reference link that is, this is similar to data structure of linked list, right? The same way, this linkage has been created. Assume somebody tries to tamper with one of the blocks. That is, assume someone changes something in block number 10. So if someone changes something in block number 10, the root hash becomes immediately immediately it becomes invalid. The root hash becomes invalid because it does not match the existing conditions. And even if it matches the conditions, okay, this will be the previous hash that is stored here will be different. So now this is different and this is different. The linkage has been broken. The link breaks. So immediately when the link breaks, everybody gets to know that there is something wrong with this. Somebody has tampered with the network, because links are not supposed to be, they are immutable. So if somebody tries to tamper with it, this stops them from tampering with the blocks. This is how chain of blocks has been formed. Okay, there is a question from Aman that any two blocks cannot be the same. Yes, no two blocks are same. They can never be same, even across different blockchains. Each blockchain will have, each hash that you generate will be unique. It will be unique to itself. Until unless every single entity that is same, you'll not get the same root hash ever again. So there are few things that are like the timestamp cannot be same for block number 11 and block number 12. It will always be different. So the root hashes of 11 and 12 can never be the same. Okay, this is how chain of blocks has been formed, and also this provides us a very strong foundation against tampering with the blocks that are being created. Now we have talked about immutability, right? So this gives, as it is much more secure and cryptographically encrypted things, this becomes quite immutable. What is immutable? Immutable is resistance to change. It is very difficult to, almost impossible, I can say, to tamper with the blockchain system. But that is not the case with the existing centralized systems. If there has been a lot of hacking attempts on a lot of the, I think in 2016 or 18, there was hacking on US healthcare systems, right? And their data was held at ransom because they all have centralized systems, right? So those are prone to attacks. If you get access to one single server, then you will be able to lock the valid users out of their information, or you can hack their systems. You can take out the data and make it public and do all sorts of things with this information. But here that is not the case. Here, because the data is not just with one person, we all have this data. It's not just one person having the information. All of us, all the 20 or 25 people who are in this meeting have the information. So nobody can lock us out of anything. Okay. Next thing is decentralized. It's a peer-to-peer network. So as we all are here, we are all have created a network, peer-to-peer network in this system. We all have the information. We all have equal responsibilities. There is no centralized authority. There is no individual who is controlling things. It is not a client server method where the client asks for information and the server provides it. Let's say I go to my bank and ask for my transaction details. Will they give me? Right? They will give my transaction details, right? So what if I go and ask for details of Ankit? Can I go to the bank and ask for details of Ankit? And can I have the transactions history of Ankit's? Is it possible? Will the bank give me? No, they will not give me because they have the control. They have the control of our information. But in the peer-to-peer network, everybody has this information. It's just that it is anonymized. Everybody can see that the whatever the transaction that has been happened between Aman and Ayush, Ankit and uh, Anam, anyone. And that also brings us to a third concept, that is transparency. As it is out in the public, everybody can see. Even I don't have to be part of a Bitcoin blockchain to see what is happening in the Bitcoin blockchain. I can directly open websites that are blockchain explorers that are out there. You can open them and see what was the recent transaction that just got executed in the uh, blockchain, which was a newly created block. What was the number of transactions? What was the block reward? Every details you'll be able to. How many transactions are there? Each transaction was transferred from which address to which address. Everything is public. So if there is any, see this with the problem with the centralized authorities is there could be some malpractice, there could be some corruptions within them that could lead to devastating results. The one of the devastating results that we have all faced is 2008, right? The financial crisis that happened, the recession that came in. With this, what happened? These financial institutions, with their malpractices, with their misjudgments, they made a lot of wrong decisions, and because of that, none of them went to jail. None of them were closed off. Maybe few were closed off, but none of them went to jail. But lot of people lost their jobs. Lot of people lost their livelihood. So at this time, at this duration, uh, the white paper, Bitcoin white paper, was came into public in 2008. In 2009, the first Bitcoin block was created. That was the Genesis block. First block is called as Genesis block. Then, or the succeeding ones are start on block number 1, block number 2, like that. Okay. Okay. So there is a question again from Aman that so much of transparency, doesn't it risk of information leakage? There is no information leakage here. The information is available in public. It is just that you will not be able to know from whom to whom. So you are anonymous. It is not like Aman has transferred money to uh, Ayush. It is A to Z has transferred to money to B to Z. It could be some. It is anonymous. We can show. I can show it to you in the end of the session. Okay, I will show it to you. So even now, if you have not understood how this is works, let me give you another example. Yeah. So, what is a blockchain? This book you can see here, right? This is a blockchain. Clear? Now, not that I have this book. All of us in this meeting have this book. That is why, because this is a decentralized peer-to-peer network. So all of us have a copy of this book. Now, in this book, only 10 pages are there. Assume there are only 10 pages. Okay. And what does each page contain? Each page contains the transactions. So just like page number 1 is connected to page number 2, page number 2 to page number 3, each block is also connected the same way. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. Right? So the difference here is here. What does this contain? Each block contains all the transactions, all the information that were verified in this particular block. Every transaction that was verified, that is added in this block. Then after that, if the transaction has happened, those will be verified in the next coming proceeding blocks. So these are pages made out of paper, but if this is a blockchain means these pages are not made of paper, these pages are made out of stone. These are made of stone, and you cannot write with a pencil on top of them. You have to write it, you have to carve on them. Okay, once you carve on them, you cannot alter it. In traditional systems we have any programming language, if you have learned, there is four operations that they teach. CRUD operations they are called: create, read, update, and delete. Right, CRUD operations. But here in blockchain systems there is no create, read, update, and delete. There is only two: read and write. If you want to make any changes to whatever has been written here, you have to add it in the updating, in the next coming blocks. This was changed to this. Okay, the history will still remain, the traceability remains. Okay, if a land has been transferred from one owner to another owner, some 2 3 people, all the people data has been recorded, and it still remains. Okay, but it just because the ownership has been changed doesn't mean that history has to be removed. There is no update operation in this. Delete we cannot do, update we cannot do. Only thing we can do is append. Got it? So I think this explains the concept of the book is a is a blockchain is a blockchain database. This contains all our information, and it's not just I have this, all of us have it. Okay, when a new transaction that happens, let's say between Mayank and Nihal. Okay, new transaction happened between Mayank and Nihal, and that is block number 11. That page has not been added yet. Okay, let's take this fresh page. This is not yet added. He is creating this new. Divya is the miner available to us. She is going to create this new block. Okay, she's creating this new block, and what is she doing? She's solving a puzzle. To create a new block, they have to solve a cryptographic puzzle. It's like you take all the transactions. With this transaction, you have to solve the puzzle. Whoever solves not just Divya, there's Aman, Ayush, and lot of other people, Ankit. Everyone is trying to solve this puzzle because they all have taken the responsibility of miners. Okay, miner means mining. Okay, not a miner like age-wise. Miners, so mining process. So they are in the process of creating the block number 11. So Divya succeeds in creating this block number 11, and she broadcasts it to every one of us in this meeting. So she says like, I have already created block number 11, accept it. So we all receive this as she has broadcasted this information. We receive this block and see that, okay, everything looks fine. If everything looks fine, everything is valid, you verify it thoroughly and then add it to our books. So block number 11 comes into us and we add it to our blockchain. That is how this works. Okay, and this is difficult to hack because there is one more reason, because there is a complex mathematical equations that are involved in doing this process. Here what happens is, uh, whatever the puzzle that Divya is trying to solve is not a simple puzzle, it's a Sudoku puzzle. Okay, at expert level. Assume it as I'm just giving a similar analogy here. It's not they're not literally going to get a Sudoku puzzle, but it's a expert level Sudoku puzzle she has to solve. It's not just she, there are other competitors who are also trying to mine block number 11, have to solve all the transactions they are taken, and they are trying to solve this problem. Whoever solves it first, they broadcast it. So once they have broadcasted it, what we get, we all of us who are not solving the problem, who are just nodes here. Okay, we see that, okay, how long does it take for us to verify a Sudoku puzzle? It takes very less time, but to solve a Sudoku puzzle it takes close to 10 minutes, right? An expert level with good enough practice, you would be able to solve in 10 minutes an expert level program. So to solve it, it takes 10 minutes. To verify it, it takes a seconds. Okay, that is why there is lot of energy, lot of time, lot of electricity, internet, mining, hardware. All this is involved in creating each and every block. There is lot of thing at stake to create a valid block. Blockchain as a whole was not something totally new that came into picture. All the technologies that blockchain is using existed previously. One is the proof of work mechanism. Second is digital timestamping. Third is uh, few of the decentralized networks, peer-to-peer networking, right? All these things were existing. They're not something new. But what it did is it brought them all together and added game theory and incentive mechanisms into this. So people who's actually mining is the person who has the authority to add any transaction, okay, to validate any transaction. He also has the power to add invalid transactions, but he will refrain from adding invalid transactions to the blockchain. Why? Because even to start competing at this level, it takes a lot of investment, time, energy, internet, hardware. All of this is going to cost them a lot. And it's after just being competing at this level, you'll be able to win, you will be able to mine a block easily. It is not that easy. It takes there's a lot of competitions, people, everybody is competing to create the next block. Why everybody is creating competing to create the next block? Because they get mining reward. All the transactions that they have added and that they're verified in this particular block, they have transaction fees involved in it. Those transaction fees is received by the miner who validates and adds it into the blockchain. He receives the reward. Plus, in Bitcoin, there is something called as mining reward. Okay, that is around 6.25 Bitcoins right now. So he will mine it, and he will refrain from adding invalid transactions, because if it's an invalid transaction, it is caught quickly. It does not take 10 minutes to catch an invalid Sudoku puzzle. It takes us fraction of maybe within a fraction of seconds we will be able to catch. Okay, this is an invalid Sudoku puzzle. This is not a valid block. Throw it off. Then all the effort that he has put, okay, trying to add an invalid transaction into the blockchain fails. He will not clear. Is this example any confusing? If you have any questions, any doubts, you can ask me anytime. I'll be answering them. There is no restriction as such. Like they can literally add invalid transactions, but they refrain from adding invalid transactions because they will not gain from it, and they will only lose with this. Let this sink in, and let's move on. Tradition. Now we are going to compare the existing internet infrastructure stack compared to the blockchain stack that we are building, that is still in its infancy stage. It is 10 years old, but still there is a lot needs to happen. There are a lot of problems that are yet unsolved in this area. Okay. Traditionally, infrastructure, how it works is we have the protocol layer, right? So it started with building the protocol layer: TCP, IP, FTP, HTTP. These are all protocols. What are these protocols? These are the ways for us to communicate with each other. How, if one person sends an information, that information has to reach the other, and this other person should be able to read the information, right? So to do this, they have created this protocol. They have created this set of rules: how the message has to be sent, how it has to be received, how encryption, decryption works. All these things they have created in this protocol. They have set up standard rules, and only when both the parties follow the same rules, they'll be able to communicate, right? That is the protocol layer that came into picture initially. Then came the network layer. Okay, in network layer is what the internet service providers, what they did, they laid cables through the ground, right? So we get internet through oceanic cables, right? It's not just wireless. We get only the wireless is only from our phone tower to our phone, our Wi-Fi router to our phones. That is all the wireless it is. Everything else is connected through cables, underground cables. So they lead this network. So we have also created this wireless network among us, right? This is a blockchain network that we have created. The same way, in the existing internet technology stack, this is how it works. So they laid those cables and then increase more connectivity, brought bigger networks into picture, then came the tipping point. Okay, it's not like exactly happened, everything happened hierarchically. Things happen, like innovations happens. It's not really like there is a rule book to how technologies evolve. They evolve as they evolve. Only we can understand them in hindsight. So the tipping point was email. So with email, it was revolutionary here. So people were able to transfer a message from one end of the earth to city to other end of the from one city to another city within minutes, within minutes. So they were able to do that. Previously they would have to wait at least 2 to 3 days for the mailman to take the message from here to, and then physically go it and give deliver it to the person. But email was a tipping point, right? Then started all the revolutionary everybody got notice of this. This is going to change things for us. This is going to improve a lot of things. After all this, slowly things built up, and now we have the application universe where we are streaming video. I'm communicating my uh, the session to you over Zoom on phones. I'm here, you all are in different parts of the country. Data sharing, cloud computing, all of these are built on top of this. These are all the these all came into later only because all these things, the network protocol and tipping points were, they laid the foundation for us to have uh, this facility today. This is what, this is all of this is the internet as it exists now, where the main focus is on information transfer. This is the innovation in information transfer. What I'm sharing my information, you are receiving the information. We watch Netflix, we watch Amazon Prime, all these things, right? It's streaming videos, all these are possible. What is this information that has been shared? Now this is, now you understood what the technology stack was previously. Now let's see how the blockchain infrastructure works. So in blockchain infrastructure, we have the protocol layer, the same protocol layer. There is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and IPFS, and others are also there. For example, Bitcoin, we all are in a Bitcoin node. So there are Bitcoin nodes who are running all the, they have all the data in with them, and the new transactions that are coming in, they are adding it into the systems. They have created the worldwide network of Bitcoin nodes. There is a protocol. Bitcoin, sorry, I made a mistake. So Bitcoin has set up rules. Ethereum has set up rules, has set up certain standards, how to create certain things. Especially in the case of Ethereum, there are certain rules, like certain standards like ERC20, ERC721 standards are available, with which we can create our own tokens. If I want to create a token that mimics cash, digital cash, I should use ERC20 token. If I want to create something that is useful for assets which are non-divisible ones, then I would use ERC 721 token, 721 standards to create those tokens, right? So these protocols, these rules are been set. Then came the network layer. Network layer, again, Bitcoin is there. My Ethereum networks are there. Miners, staking pools, full nodes, we are all full node here. Like we all create the network. We are all part of this network. We allow people to make use of this network. Okay, if someone wants to build an application on top of this, we should allow them, right? Because there is already network that is existing, and then on top of this only we can build applications that can be used by everyone. The tipping point is the first application. Here the tipping point is still the same, that is Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin, when it came in 2008, it took time. Okay, it took a lot of time for it to evolve to what it is right now, but it became a truly digital currency, because Bitcoin is the original coin. Every other cryptocurrency that exists till now, they are all called altcoins. What is altcoins? Alternative coins. Okay, altcoins are alternative to what? Alternative to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the original digital cryptocurrency. So with this, people were able to transfer money from one part of the country till now. Information we are able to transfer like that, but money is still so slow. If I have to receive a transaction from US to my bank account, it takes 2 days, minimum of 2 days, and if there is no bank holidays or anything, right? It takes around 2 days for money to reach me even today in this world. But with Bitcoin, you can transfer it in 10 minutes from anywhere to anywhere at fraction of cost. Maybe if there is a close competition that could ever get to this, would be the Hawala network, but I don't think that we can take it as a consideration here. So I don't know how it works, but it could be cost effective. That is cost effective. That's why people prefer it, right? Uh, this is much more cost effective to transfer money, and much faster and reliable as well. It is reliable. Either you transfer the money or you won't lose the money. The transaction will succeed or fail. If it fails, you are not going to lose the money overnight, over anything. You will still have the money in your account. Coming to the application universe is still building. Right now we have smart contracts which are built on top of Ethereum. Most of them are built on top of Ethereum. Distributed computing, tokenizations, smart contracts we can write, just like we write applications, right? Apps we write on app stores, we can write apps on using smart contracts, and they are called dApps. They're called dApps, called decentralized applications. Distributed computing is I will share. I have my laptop. I will share, maybe I have 1 TB of space in my laptop. I will share around 250 GB of space to one of the network, blockchain network. Use this 250 GB of space to store your information and pay me certain money. You can use, I have a very good CPU processor in my laptop. Then I will give you processing power. I will not just give you storage space, I'll also give you processing power. Okay, make use of this processing power and do calculations. Build a supercomputer with this processing power. Build with this 250 GB of space, you can create a decentralized cloud storage. Right now cloud storage are there, but they are centralized. They are either with Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud, right? But they are all centralized. With this you can build a decentralized cloud storage. You can build a decentralized uh, social network. There are existing systems that decentralized social networks that pay you for every information that you post. They exist even today. What are we doing here? We are doing innovation in the area of value transfer. It's not just information transfer, we are transferring value. We are previously, the things that we were not able to turn it into digitally, we can make them digitally available now. We can transfer real estate properties, ownership from online. That was not possible. We can do voting online now. With why most of the countries do not use electronic voting systems? Only there is one country that usually uses a electronic voting system, that is Estonia. But that's a very small country. Okay. uh, why? Because it is prone to attacks. People, if we make voting into, if we have electronic voting, none of the political party would be coming and begging for your votes. All of them would be trying to find who is the best hacker in town, who can hack the systems much faster, who will give me the perfect result. They will focus on that. That is why still we do not have electronic voting systems, right? With this we can create a tamper proof. Okay, nobody can tamper with it, nobody can hack with it systems. These these conditions are much more suitable to create a digital voting system, or to transfer ownership of any kind of assets. This is about blockchain infrastructure. Okay, so now that we are in in this network, we all have to agree, right? It's not that I will agree that block number 11 is valid, that someone else disagrees with it. So then what happens? Then there is a mismatch in the data. That should not happen. All of us should have same information stored. Everyone's block number 11 should be the same. Everyone's block number 12 should be the same. 13, 14, every block in every single of our books should be same. One person, see, it could happen like two people simultaneously at different parts of the world create block number 11 together, and they start broadcasting, and someone will accept some, because few people receive it first, people receive the block number 11 from the other person later. Okay, it could happen, this situation can come, but then there are certain rules and mechanisms in place to resolve this conflict. Clear? Okay. So consensus algorithms allows us to do this. That is how all of us, either all of us have to agree at something, all of us have to disagree at something. As we are in this meeting, we are still in different places. We all have different systems, but still the conditions, if one person agrees, then everyone should agree, right? But we are not really asking each other whether are you agreeing to this, are you agreeing to this? No, we are individually arriving at a decision, but all of us will arrive at the same decision if you follow the rules correctly. That is what consensus algorithms are for. So I've explained one of the consensus algorithm to you till now, that is proof of work. Okay, the mining process where Divya is trying to mine the blockchain, Sudoku puzzle solving, all of this is the mining process. Complex, computing complex equations to maintain the public record, right? This is the existing system in Bitcoin, proof of work. Okay, where mining is the process, and as a reward of adding valid transactions into the blockchain, Divya would receive, currently today she would receive 6.25 bitcoins for mining one block. Do not try to calculate the value right now, that is quite high. Coming to the other one, that is proof of stake. Ethereum was also on proof of work till recently. I think after May 2020, they have moved from proof of work to proof of stake. Okay, where this process is not called as mining, it is called as staking. Here, what happens is, let's say I have certain ether in my account. I have 100 ethers, and I'm going to deposit this 100 ether into an escrow account, and I get the license to validate the transactions. If I have 100 ethers, I'm going to deposit, keep this as my collateral, that if I do anything wrong, you can charge from that. Okay, as I've kept $100, 100 ethers as collateral, I get the ownership of, I get the license to verify transactions. I get the license to add new blocks into the blockchain. So once I get this license, what I can do, I will validate transactions, create blocks, and add it into the blockchain. So there are much more details in this. I cannot get into all of those right now. So I will explain to you in a much brief way. So, uh, so I get the license to validate this. I get the license to create new blocks, and I'll add this block into the blockchain. In case if I try to add any invalid transactions into this blockchain, into this block, then the money that I've kept as stake. So before that, uh, let me just rewind a little. Okay, I'm trying to mine this block, and I'll add all the transactions in this and add it into the blockchain. So I've created block number 11, and I'm going to add it to the blockchain. So what do I get by doing this? I get the transaction fees. Whatever the transactions that was associated with these transactions, these hundreds and thousands of transactions, I will receive that transaction fees as my reward. There is no mining reward as such in Ethereum network. Okay, there is no mining reward as such. Only the transaction fees will be received by me. If I do something wrong, if I try to add any invalid transactions into this, then the deposit that I have kept, around 100 ethers, from that maybe 50 ethers will be deducted at once. So for mining every block, I will receive around one ether, maybe maximum one ether of transaction fees in total. But if I do add any one invalid transaction into the blockchain, then around 50 ethers will be deducted from my deposit. So I lose, I'm at a risk of losing I have a lot of risk, if I add any invalid transactions. So people do not try to add invalid transactions in this, because they gain to lose in this situations. So that is where the game theory comes into picture. So these all systems were existing, but we are forcing people to, we are like, it is much more beneficial for people. There is incentive in them doing the right thing. If you do the right thing, you earn. But if you do the wrong thing, you will get to lose a lot. So some people right now, as this Ethereum staking has come into picture, people are started staking and try to earn passive income. So there are a lot of earning streams with this system. You can build your own, mining pool, not mining pool. If you have enough ethers, you can stake it and have a system to and start validating transactions. And as you validate transactions, you earn money. So you don't have to literally sit and do this. The system will do. Your computer has to download certain softwares and try to, it needs to be running all the time. If it does that, then you'll start earning ether. It's passive income, right? So the bigger the transaction, so there is a question again. The bigger the transaction, harder it will be to create the block, or is it same for every? So there is nothing like it's a bigger transaction. Okay, it's all written in plain English. So it does not require. It's it's like from, you write it in plain English, like from Aman to Ayush. Amount is $100. That is all it is. Bigger transaction is like $1,000, $10,000. It all remains the same. It does not matter like how big the transaction is about, how the volume of the transaction is about. Clear? Any other questions? Now we are going to discuss a bit about smart contracts. So we have talked about smart contracts like building dApps in the previous slides, but what are smart contracts? How can we use them? So smart contracts are contractual agreements that is implemented using software. So these are agreements that are done between two parties, two or more parties, using software. The software executes the agreements. Okay, let's take a very simple example of that is okay. Let's take much more simpler example of cash on delivery. Okay, right now what we are doing, nobody is preferring cash on delivery, right? We are paying first and then receiving the product later. Why? Because we are trusting we are putting our trust on the intermediary, that is Amazon, Flipkart, or someone else, some other e-commerce site. We are putting our trust on them and expecting them that they are not going to break the trust, hoping that they don't break our trust. With our fingers crossed, we pay our money first and try to get the product later. But what if you can do cash on delivery digitally? Okay, that can be implemented with a smart contract. Like, you make a deal, there is no need of the intermediary like Amazon or Flipkart here. So we build a blockchain system which can facilitate, e-commerce uh, buying and selling of goods. So we can write a smart contract where my money will be stored. Okay, if only if I receive the product, once I validate everything is correct, the money will be transferred to the buyer's account. This can be achieved. So now the buyer will also don't have to worry that after I give the product, will he give the money, or without giving money, will he run away? Right? He doesn't have to worry about that, because the money is stored in the smart contract. It will do exactly what it is written. Okay, once my money gets into the smart contract, if I do not like the product, if I have to return it, then I can trigger that certain conditions and the money will come back to my account. This is cash on delivery online. This is one of the example. Much other examples are also there. like rights. Let's say there are certain artists who create songs, create music, and they can publish their rights ownership of this in on a blockchain. So then whoever wants to make use of this copyright, they would have to sign the smart contract that I would want to use this particular music in my uh, creations. Then when they do that, as soon as they do it, there is a certain money that will be deducted from their account, and the usage rights will be it is written in the smart contract that how many times can you use it, how long can you use it. If they use more, then more money will be deducted, and the royalties, whatever the copyrights that has been consumed, will be directly going to the artist. But in the current industry, it's like we are creating a decentralized Spotify, okay, where the content creators get the most benefit, not the intermediary like Spotify or Apple Music or iTunes or any of them. So in the current industries, what happening is the major share goes to the production houses, okay, production houses, or these people who are actually marketing the content, not actually the one who is creating the content. This is the same case with the news, right? You must have heard about the Australia and the battle between Australia and Facebook and Google. What Australia is saying that you have to pay news media for the content they are creating. They are the people who are actually doing the investigation. They are actually writing it. They are actually editing and doing all the groundwork that needs to be done to create the content. So what Google, Facebook, everybody is doing, they are just distributing this content, and they earn ad revenue out of it. They earn ad revenue out of it. But what they are not going to tell these news media companies is that they are not going to tell how much money they have earned from this. They're only going to give you certain share. I'll give you $100. You have to keep it. That's all they can do. That they do not have the bargaining power here, because it is controlled by centralized authorities. Today, when I say Facebook, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? It is not that it's a cool social media website where I can connect with my friends, chat with them, share posts about my what is happening in my life. No, the first thing that comes to your mind is the privacy concerns. Facebook is not good. Facebook really is behind my data. Google also does that, but it does it in a much without making much noise, right? WhatsApp, uh, till recently, like, okay, WhatsApp tried to change the privacy policy, then all of us rally behind saying, "No, okay, switch to Signal, switch to Telegram," and blah blah blah. Now again we are all on WhatsApp. We are all hooked onto it. It's as long as our peers are on WhatsApp, we will never leave WhatsApp. Yeah, because it has so much control. They have control over it. Tomorrow, if they start charging for they'll not start charging, but they will post ads in the banners and in the status and things. But when they do that, we cannot control. We cannot say no to it. If we want to remove those ads, then we would have to start paying for them, like YouTube is doing, right? YouTube is giving lots of one ad, two ad. Initially starting there was only one ad. Now there are two ads in the beginning, two ads at the end, and there are ads in the middle as well. So they are making it so difficult for you to use a free version of YouTube, that you would have to buy the YouTube Premium. And who gets all the revenue? Not the news content that you see on YouTube. Okay, the most of the money is gained by Google, or Google, YouTube, right? That needs to change. These smaller companies, these giants, now not smaller, these giants have a lot of control, lot of power over us. To take away this power, to build a much more distributed powerful systems, we need blockchain. It is not just technological innovation, it is a social innovation as well. It is a political innovation. Politics also is involved in this. Okay, voting systems are important, and you can hold your MPs and MLAs accountable if they are working on a smart contract based blockchain systems where we will be able to identify how long did this person take to resolve an issue, how much fundraising has been, how much fund has been given to this particular city, to this MP, and how he has utilized it. There's a lot of digital governance that can be done on with smart contracts on blockchain. Okay, so this I'm trying to wrap up things here. Okay, so I'm just giving the ideas of what are the industries that are impacted with blockchain, but these are not the only industries, and these are not. This is a very simplified version of the impact that is happening. Digital governance, insurance. So let's say there is a car accident that happens, and the car is fitted with a tamper-proof blockchain system, IoT system. Okay, so as soon as the insurance company verifies that okay, all these things were met, who was the driver had the valid license, and was it his mistake, how did this happen, all this information is stored in the blockchain, is verified, then immediately money can be transferred to the victim's account or the insurer's account, and insurance company need not have to run behind verifying all of this. Okay, if these conditions are met, that if the blockchain says it is met, it is met, nobody can tamper with it, right? That is one of the main use case that we are getting out of blockchain. Digital governance, where I explained personal identity. So with personal identity, what we can say is, like, let's say when the policeman stops you, and when you're driving your bike or a car, he asks you to show your license. So when you show your license card, what are you showing him? You're showing him your name, you're showing him your date of birth, you're showing him your father's name. Okay, what he actually needs to know, is, do you have a valid license or not? That is all he needs to know. He doesn't need to know your father's name, date of birth. These information we are freely giving him. So these can all be implemented with this. There are some concepts like zero knowledge proof. Okay, so those are much focused on building much more privacy and personal identity related solutions. Automobile industry, the same example of an automobile fitted with IoT based blockchain systems. And supply chain management, you can easily track how the from where the goods are moving, how it is moving, and it gives much higher traceability to things. Cross border payments, I have explained to you, and there's like it takes 10 minutes. Cross border payments. Asset management, you can transfer your real estate ownership from one person to another, and you can artwork, if you have any artworks, you can sell them online digitally as well. Agriculture also, healthcare, lot of medical data. So right now our medical data, who owns our data? We do not own our medical information. In India, you may have your information in the form of sheets. That is the information that is provided by the hospital. But in US and all, your information is not with you. Who is the owner of your info? The hospitals are the owner of your information, right? Though it is your data, they are owners. They can do whatever with it. They can sell it. But that, so to take control back, what we can build a healthcare blockchain system where your data is with you. Only when the hospital requires it, it can ask for your permission and access your data. These systems are getting built. These are in progress. There, especially the prescriptions, supply chain of these pharmaceuticals, uh, management. All these this can be implemented on blockchain. Certificates. See, I have received one certificate from the University of Nicosia, where I did one of the blockchain courses. So there, I have this certificate on Bitcoin blockchain. Okay, they've implemented a system where there's a website. If I go there and upload the exact certificate which they have given, not changing anything, any details, okay, in the file. If I change anything, then the hash changes, right? You're not supposed to alter with it. If I upload the original file that they have given into that website, it tells me whether my certificate is a valid one or invalid. So a lot of certificate frauds that happen, right? 10th marks card, 12th marks card, they are like there's a who are altering it and trying to get uh, seats in colleges, and all these things are happening. So to avoid such things, to build a you can build a certificate with these are built. These I've literally used this system. Agriculture also, like to because of food related poisoning and other food related because there was something wrong mixed into the food, some fertilizer that could harm. Around half a million people die every year. To avoid all these things, we should have food traceability, from which farm it was produced, who was the one who did processing of this food, who packed this food, where did this come from. Once we identify, okay, there is a certain incident that is happening, then immediately we can track from who all owns this particular grain that was that was produced in this farm. All these things can be done much faster, much quickly, and uh, reliably. Traceability improves with blockchain, and it is tamper evident. That is one key feature you can remember. It is tamper evident. Let's look at the really trending topics these days, okay, in the blockchain ecosystem, and end this session. Okay, these two, DeFi and NFTs, are the trending topics right now. What is DeFi? DeFi is distributed finance. All the financial services that we are using right now is centralized. Savings, lending, investments, fundraising, or insurance, everything is centralized. So what distributed finance movement try to do is try to decentralize everything. Okay, to be exchange, the stock market, exchange, everything is centralized. To build systems that are totally decentralized without having any centralized control. So variety of financial services, loan, lending, you can lend money and borrow money on these platforms like Compound and Aave, where you will be able to gain more interest than any traditional systems. If you in India, you may get around 4.5-5%, I guess, yearly savings account income. But if you are going to create a savings account on a decentralized finance system, you would get around 12%. There is this new concept called as yield farming that has come into picture. In this, there are decentralized exchanges where you can exchange money, one cryptocurrency to other cryptocurrency. They are not centrally governed by anyone. There is no person who can stop these exchanges from working, because it is distributed. Whom will you hold it responsible? Will you hold me responsible? Because I'm equally responsible as all of you are in this network. I do not have special powers, but we all together. I cannot. If you catch me, they have to catch you as well. So to catch you, then they would have to travel to Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, maybe some other countries as well, right? So they would have to hold everyone responsible. By then they hold everyone responsible. New players would have emerged in the system, and the network would have grown much bigger. So this is sensor resistant. These systems are sensor resistant. These are tamper proof, and the control and the authorities do not have really control over it. You cannot ban this. You cannot really stop it from working unless people involved in this lose faith in it. That is the only way where people stop, until and unless you find much better way to give all this control back to the people. This is DeFi, distributed finance. Every single financial aspect that is existing is converted into a distributed finance system where the gains are much higher usually. Okay, but I'm not giving any kinds of financial advice here, but you should be careful before investing. You do your research properly. That is all I can say. uh, and NFTs are non-fungible tokens. What is NFT? They are cryptographic tokens which represent something unique, thus not mutually interchangeable. Here, Bitcoin let's say I have one Bitcoin and Sagar has one Bitcoin. Okay, I have one Bitcoin and Sagar has one Bitcoin. So if I'll make a deal with Sagar that I will give you this Bitcoin, will you give me yours? Will you agree? Yes, he will agree because there is no change, because these both Bitcoins are same. Let's say I have a 10 rupees note to and one other, you have one more 10 rupees note. Let's say I'll give you this 10 rupees note, will you give me this, give me yours? He will give, because they are interchangeable, their values are same. One Bitcoin with you, one Bitcoin with Sagar, both have same value. But NFT tokens are not like that. NFT tokens, each token has unique values. You would have heard of CryptoKitties, right? That was one of the initial NFTs that was created. So each and every single CryptoKitty is a unique token. It has unique value. You cannot exchange one CryptoKitty with another CryptoKitty. So with this, there are a lot of games that are getting developed, like digital assets. I can tell you, like the game skins. No, skins, unique skins are available in the games, digital games, and uh, digital digital real estates are available. So you can buy digital land over there and build something unique on top of that, and you can sell it to someone else. That is very unique, and it is individual. Digital art is available. You can create digital art and sell it as an NFT, where each and every single crypto, or sorry, every crypto token is unique, and not all of their value is same. Their value differs from one to another. So a lot of innovations are happening in these two areas currently, and primarily focused on the DeFi. I think that is all I have to tell today. So I hope you have enjoyed this session and have got a lot to learn from this. And these are a few of the references that I have uh, used. And thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm here. Any questions, guys?
So I guess we've come to an end. Um, I thank you wholeheartedly for spreading the insights and educating us in the best way possible. You've ever so beautifully explained us about the infrastructure, how it works, and I'm very sure it was a very insightful experience for all of us. So I also thank all the students who took their time out of the busy schedule. We've planned webinars every day of this month. So please check out our social media for regular updates. And you also get updates about our daily webinars and what subjects we go through. Tomorrow we have a webinar on Trick the Math, on getting math to be solved a very simpler process. So please go through our website for more details. And I thank you so much for hosting this webinar and for carrying out this webinar. So it was really informative, and yeah, have a good day, everyone. I think we've come to an end.
Thank you all. So there is a question from, are you planning a follow-up? I do not have an answer to that. So there, I do regular sessions on crypto, not cryptocurrency, usually blockchains, and part of that session you could join and get to learn more on that.
Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Had a good session.